marginalisation in energy consumption and citizen behaviours. And let me maybe introduce our speakers. We have 3 speakers in the panel. And the first one is Clemens Striebing, Dr. Clemens Striebing, representing Fraunhofer Institute. It is a partner in the gEneSys project, important partner, because together with his colleagues, Dr. Striebing provided a very strong qualitative and quantitative components into the project, but not only, they also proposed very innovative toolkit for practitioners and also the LLM model-based persona to facilitate a dialogue with the data itself. So it is, I think it is very interesting. And we have also 2 experts, Dr. Nives della Valle, who is a behavioral economist with over a decade of experience at the intersection of research and policy, focusing on how people engage with energy system. And she had also experience gained in academia and beyond, which is also and in research agencies. So she did a lot of effort to bridge the theory and practice. And it is the same story with our second expert, Lorenzo de Vidovich, who is senior researcher in the Ricerca, Sistema, Energetico. But he has also, as all our speakers, obtained PhD, and he did a lot to bridge the theory, research, and practice, working for effective transition. So maybe we can start. So maybe I will invite you here, our expert, and also Clemens asking for presenting his result. After his presentation, we will ask our experts for sharing their perspectives and providing the comments to the research. And after that, we will open floors for the audience. Okay, so we will do it all together. Okay, so please, Clemens, the floor is yours.
All right, so thank you very much. Thank you for the inputs so far. Marielle and Elizabeth has triggered me already on so many academic personnel levels, but I really try to be on the focus and to have enough time for us to discuss, and yeah, not going to share my impressions right now. I'm going to elaborate a little bit about our work package, our work focus within the project of gEneSys. This was our work focus. However, the work done was really kind of joint effort with all consortium colleagues contributing to case study work, to joint articles, publications, and also the advisory board discussing our results with each other. So what we did actually was that we surveyed about 30,000 people in the European Union and in Sub-Saharan Africa. We asked them a lot of questions, really a lot of questions, but especially I want to point today on a novel scale that we developed to assess energy participation. We tried to give you a recommendation based on that scale, what's the most pressuring, most urgent challenges regarding energy participation are from the perspective of the people that we had been surveying. And yeah, we tried to adopt an intersectional perspective for all of this. So let me tell you short about the so-called gEneSys data set. It is a data set which we collected in 6 European countries, 4 sub-Saharan countries, 3,000 citizens in each country, and we have been asking about their energy consumption, about their role in energy production, their role in energy decision making, their opinions about it, and most importantly also their feelings related to this. We had a tried to do this in an intersectional approach, and part of this intersectional approach was that we surveyed socio-demographic variables very extensively. So, for example, we started with age, coming over sexual orientation of the people, asking them for diagnosed mental illnesses, and asking how they live the gender roles in their specific households with their partners. You can download the data set on Zenodo, and we also included a documentation there giving more details about the data set. The data is about, I think, 1.5 year old, so still attractive to work with us. I was talking about the so-called, about the novel scale that we developed. It's a research article that is currently under development. Our colleagues Maria Camilla and Marco Cellini had been working with us on this. The idea is maybe not that new, so we started based on the so-called capability approach from Amartya Sen and Martha Nussbaum. The core point of the capability approach is that it is great if you have formal access to energy, but it is much more important what you are capable of doing with this formal access. So formal access is a fundament, but yeah, it should enable you to do something. And to what should it enable you? We formulated something about 26 different behavioral items based on this theory, and then did our empirical research and tried to find empirical patterns where the answer behavior of people is really different. We identified 6 different capabilities. The first one is the capability to consume your energy in a sustainable way, in an environmental friendly way. The second capability was the capability to consume your energy without limitations for your household. So for example, without limitations in learning, using the internet, having electricity access, inviting people to your home. Third capability was one might call the energy poverty capability, to have affordable, reliable and safe energy access in your household. Fourth one is to use your energy free from health damage, from harm for your health. Fifth one was to take an informed role in energy decision making, in deciding about your energy accesses. And the sixth one was taking part in the political system. We measured it through the belief that politicians in energy politics are responsive to me as a citizen. Mind that there's a different, an important line of differentiation between the different capabilities. We have, for example, more access-related capabilities, capabilities 2, 3, and 4, and we have more agency-related capabilities. For example, factor 1, 5, and 6. So the agency-related capabilities are empowering me to do something. The access-related capabilities are more of being free of any limitations, restrictions. This differentiation will become more important in a few more slides. And now imagine you are a political decision maker, you have only limited budget, limited amounts of money. What kind of capabilities would you try to optimize among your citizens? I had a real tough time in our summer school in Rome when we tried to discuss this within our consortium, and it really made me think, and it brought me to the point that it might be of interest to develop some kind of recommendation system. What kind of which of those capabilities are the most relevant pressuring from the perspective of citizens. And so we developed a so-called priority score. Yeah, it's kind of simple metrics. This priority score is the product of the need of people, a Gini coefficient and a deprivation coefficient. What does it mean? This priority score increases if the lack of a capability is widespread, if it is unequally distributed, and if it is connected to a lived sense of injustice. So when we had been calculating need, we asked, for example, do you have affordable energy in your household on a scale from 1 to 7, and we did a cutoff value at, for example, at 3 or 4, and all people below that cutoff value are those in need. That's our simulated assumption here. We calculated a Gini value. I can explain a little bit about this later if it's of interest. It's a measure for how equally distributed the capability among citizens is. And we had been also asking households, people, for their feeling of relative deprivation. Do I have a sense of being treated unfairly in life? If I compare myself to my peers, to my neighbors, do I have the feeling that I'm worse off than them? And so we correlated this feeling of deprivation with the capabilities and included this deprivation coefficient. And what I'm going to show next is a heat map. It's a heat map of our capabilities in the rows and our countries, the countries that we surveyed in the columns. And the darker green the cell is, the higher the priority of this capability. This is a little bit much information on the first slide, so let me try to give you a little bit more detail about it. So it shows us that from the perception of people, the most relevant prioritized capabilities are energy barriers in daily life in European countries as well as in sub-Saharan African countries. And it shows that energy and health is also a very relevant capability in the sub-Saharan Africa's countries, especially in Nigeria and Uganda, a little bit more than in the other countries. And maybe of interest, it also shows that trust in energy politics is also a very scarce resource, to say it like this, especially in Nigeria and in Portugal. So the agency-related, most of the agency-related capabilities are not that prioritized. There's no problem consciousness, one might say, among citizens. Problem consciousness is more related to the access-related capabilities. And what is also, or what was also interesting for me is that there are different patterns behind the priorities. For example, energy barriers in daily life are important in the European countries because not many people here have a need, not many people are in need, but we have a very strong deprivation related to it. And in the sub-Saharan African countries, there's not that much strong feeling of deprivation correlated to the need, but much more people are in need. I will only, I long time was thinking how to boil down the extensive research that we did in 100 pages long reports about intersectionality and gender gaps, and the result is now one slide. And I think the most important takeaways, we did some research investigating gender gaps among countries, among the different capabilities, and for me it was interesting to see that all access-related capabilities, there we have no real gender gaps, not strong gender gaps, maybe in one or the other country, but not structurally. All agency-related capabilities have strong gender gaps, and that might be one of the most important takeaways from this lecture. So if you're going to do research on gender gaps in energy, it might be worthwhile to focus on those agency-related capabilities like trust and involvement in energy politics and decision-making, informed decision-making about energy use in your household, and decision-making about sustainable energy in your household. We also did a lot of intersectional analysis. We tried to work with some machine learning, decision tree analysis, random forest analysis, many stuff. And there we found that some patterns repeatedly occurred. Gender in combination with caregiving responsibilities, gender in combination with mental health issues, and in some countries, sometimes also gender in combination with minority status really affected the participation in the energy system. In our final report, we tried to boil this down into several recommendations for design principles. What is a good design of just energy politics? Only 3 of those recommendations here. The first one is technical access is meaningless without the time, knowledge, and decision-making power to use it. This decision-making power, time, all these resources are distributed in a different way among households. So each household has its own setting to distribute these resources. And the third one is that politics should build a broad legitimacy by framing policies around everyday dignity and universal fairness. I mean, politicians are so good communicators, but yeah, it's, once you're in power, it appears to be very difficult to keep your communication focused on citizens, at least from the view of the citizens. Let me go very quickly through 3-4 products that we produced as part of our journey in gEneSys. First one is a policy paper, very short policy paper, very layperson friendly, where we conducted some intersection and analysis of energy poverty together with the Friedrich Ebert Foundation. German political foundation, was translated in Polish language, English, German, and Italian language. I think the most prominent pressure groups that we identified were single mothers in France. Could discuss a lot about this. Aleksandra already mentioned that we developed some kind of LLM-based chatbot. So we conducted cluster analysis to identify vulnerable or clusters of vulnerable persons within our data set. We compiled cluster descriptions and transferred those descriptions into a chatbot systems, and now it is possible to do some explorative design thinking research with those personas about what fair and good energy policies could be. We also developed a so-called gender and energy toolkit, so we collected a lot of guidelines, research articles that should enable researchers, research funders, but also policymakers to integrate gender dimension into energy research. Then please find our final report of the gEneSys project under this link. There we present the capability scale and also the different country level data. And we also prepared for this meeting today some data dashboard about the energy capabilities and how prevalent they are in the different countries. And you can play around a little bit with the data and the different matrix on your own. Yeah, I think the presentations will be shared afterwards. And I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to leave you some space for saying what you like and where you see the limitation or what struck you at most in this research. But also I really wonder to know your perspectives on how this result could be seen in the wider context of current debate on energy justice and energy citizenship. So maybe we can start with Nives.
Okay. First of all, thanks a lot for the opportunity to hear the presentation and to go through the deliverable and the opportunity to be here today at the final event of this great project. It's very timely given the current circumstances that we are living geopolitically, I think even more. So thanks again in general. And talking about this deliverable specifically, what was striking me the most, I think, is the sample, because as an economist, I like numbers, but I also like people, being a behavioral economist. So it's a perfect match, and having 30,000 observations, not only from the EU, but also from the Global South, from sub-Saharan African countries, I think it's something that should be really considered as outstanding, because in the European project we always focus mostly on the EU. So I would say that is one thing to highlight. And maybe connecting to the global south, because there is for sure a link with the energy justice framework, but given that we have many countries from sub-Saharan African countries, we could also explore one tenet that is often forgotten, which is the restorative dimension. And maybe this is food for thought for the future, but maybe by squeezing also the data. Now I don't know how the items were formulated, but maybe this can also be linked with the deprivation index that you measured, which is a sort of perceived fairness perceptions. And it will be very nice to dig into this aspect, because for the global south it makes a difference to look at the restorative dimension. It's also Elizabeth was mentioning, it's a completely different story when we look at the energy justice normative and evaluative perspective in the EU and the global south. And so yes, just food for thought in a nutshell. I wanted to say that. And for sure the priority, the ability to give priority is something that policymakers always strive for. I've been seeing this when I was at the JRC, and even more when I was at the IEEE. In the end, policymakers, as you wrote very kindly in the deliverable, have an oversupply of solutions, but in the end they need to make choices because they have competing goals under budget constraints and also always fighting for political consensus. So the prioritization score that you developed, I think, is a very important first step on which to build and help policymakers make choices. I say first because, of course, there is always room for improvement, and so maybe there will be always other dimensions that can be added, but the link to the capabilities is something that might also enable policymakers to go a bit beyond what scares them most, that is the lack of political consensus. When there are some sensitive frames that are always there. So when we talk about justice, intersectionality, gender inequality, some terms of this type are really forbidden in certain environments. But if we show them the consequences that are associated to the priority, like you show that some capabilities are more important in certain countries rather than others. And if we link this to the consequences that this imply for countries, like, okay, there might be an increase in health costs, in hospitalization rates, then they will even more care about this, because in the end, if we always use only concepts and frameworks, then we will lose them. So I think the prioritization score is a very first important brick on which to build upon in order to capture their attention and not to make them think that we are only talking about ideological issues. And I'm saying this because I experienced this. There is not only DG employment that cares about social policy, but there are always other directorates that maybe focus more on the flexibility and the stability of grid. So for them, it's important to frame the problem connected to what they care the most. Then I want to leave also the floor to Lorenzo, but what I also wanted to highlight is the citizenship perspective, something that I also made a lot of research about, and the connection with energy poverty. And having used the capabilities perspective is a way also to think about energy no longer as a commodity, but as an essential service that can really unlock capabilities further. And here there is a link of participation and a vicious cycle that might emerge, because if people don't have access to energy or they cannot afford energy services, then they face multidimensional deprivation of capabilities that prevent them even more to participate to the energy transition. And so that's why we need to focus really on making energy and energy services accessed and affordable to all even more, because otherwise we reinforce existing inequalities even more. And I close with the link between participation and citizenship, because there is now this discourse of making citizens protagonists of the energy transition, which is one of the motto of the energy citizenship literature, but also policy debate. And there is a normative assumption, because in the end we are assuming that all citizens care about participating to the energy transition, but maybe they have other problems, other daily problems, and they care about energy only because they use it for daily use. But here the capabilities again enables us to highlight even more the role of empowering capabilities, because in the end what the capabilities framework says is that we need to empower citizens, we need to increase their capabilities, we need to give them the opportunities to participate, but then it's up to them how they want to use them. This is the idea of Amartya Sen, of the freedom of choice. So, okay, maybe they don't want to participate, but it's our responsibilities to empower them and give them all the opportunities, and then they decide what they want to do with them.
And Lorenzo, please share your perspective with us.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me too. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad. I'm also thankful to Nives that anticipated some of the keywords that I'm also going to address. So pleased that there are some sort of connection among this comment. But first of all, I would like to I endorse a key insight from the report, from the research report, from the deliverable, which is about voice in energy policy and about the fact that the focus on capabilities itself and the awareness of capability deprivation is now actually well established among scholars, whether they are behavioral economists or social scientists and practitioners. But conversely, the dimension of voices in the energy policies remain a bit insufficiently incorporated in the energy policies themselves, and I think that the outcomes of the research provide clear evidence that still great efforts are needed by the decision makers even to embrace the capability perspective in the decision making itself. And the research framework that I found very interesting also evokes me, at least to my knowledge, another research which is entitled Well-Based Research Project, which was grounded in 6 very heterogeneous European countries, which in a framework quite aligned to that of gEneSys provided the conceptualization of energy functionings as the outcome of a combination of 4 interconnected dimensions that cannot be ignored anymore when looking at energy transition policies and energy policies in general. The carrier itself, electricity, natural gas, liquefied gas, even coal, actually, according to the inequalities in the access to clean energy, the appliances themselves at home, including for heating, cooling, and ventilation system and lighting, kitchen, the energy services themselves that are ensured through the appliances, so namely the heating, cooling, ventilation, and lighting, and the capabilities understood as the ability to satisfy the energy needs through the effective use a decent access to energy services delivered at home. I think that energy functioning starts are not only neutral with respect to energy behaviors, with respect to practices, and also to households agency, they are nor detached from issues of security of the energy system that are central within the energy, even in the 3 tenets of the energy justice framework, where security is understood as the capacity, as the assurance that the energy functionings can be even maintained over time, because we do know that issues of conditions of vulnerabilities varies over time, are not fixed when focusing on with energy deprivation. And I think that The research itself and the deliverable, although not explicitly looking at these aspects, well epitomizes and well points out all these aspects, even in terms of the difficulty of accessing to those technologies and all the innovations that make energy transition enable and making possible. Although we do still know that there are some differences and still inequalities in the access to decarbonization technologies and within climate neutrality agendas. At the same time, we do know that these differences coexist and run between Western and non-Western countries, and these differences lead me to the second point, which involves a kind of caution regarding a specific usage of dualisms when doing comparative analysis. This is something that I did not see in the research, but reading the deliverable came raised to my mind this aspect, which is about the concern about the analytical risk when comparing different contexts, the analytical risk of reproducing dualisms, conceptual dualisms, that no longer serve this field, as for the case of the energy poverty and fuel poverty dualisms. In the 80s, when, as Marielle well reminded, when energy poverty was still not a research topic, nor in Europe and nor the world, Brenda Boardman informed us about fuel poverty as an issue related to warmth, as an issue related to thermal comfort in UK, whereas energy poverty was more related to the issues of justice in non-Western countries and decent access to energy. Over the years, of course, throughout the years, energy poverty has turned into the dominant label, and the two topics have begun to be used interchangeably. But the research advanced so much that this dualism is no longer considered helpful, because regardless we are looking at issues of injustice or deficiencies or complete lack to access to services in sub-Saharan Africa and non-Western countries, or issues of warmth that now must be addressed alongside issues of cooling, also domestic spaces. Of course, the dualism no longer serves. So when we look jointly at the evident difference that run between two countries, not to say between two consequences, we must be very aware about the fact of not reproducing the risk of defining different phenomena. Of course, lack of access to energy, which to my knowledge has advanced towards the adoption of energy vulnerability as, I wouldn't say an all-encompassing concept, but as a highly descriptive concept that could be adapted to the specificity of each national context and of each local context, well enabled to prevent the risk of not reproducing dualisms, because dualisms hamper the research itself and also the identification of targeted groups according to the needs that they raise. I've also, if I have 3 minutes more, I've also kind of highly appreciated there is this box with the policy package on everyday energy barriers addressed with reference to EU, and points out two issues that I kind of faced with in an experience as an energy poverty project manager working for the municipality I comes from, which is that of Milan, and is about the policy delivery itself, which I've noticed that from supranational to national to the local scale, policy delivery is somehow challenging. Like, there are no perfect policy designs for energy policies themselves, in my opinion, for one reason or another. But just to make an example, is it pointed out in that box that automatic eligibility to specific tools or specific policies would be needed? And I completely agree to this. Conversely, we do know that large majority of anti-energy poverty or energy vulnerability policies, even when in the case when they are based on automatisms, they fail to completely capture and reach those that are most in need. This happened in Italy for the so-called energy bonus for electricity and gas, which is kind of economic support to the energy consumption, which failed to address or to be reached by all the households in that are identified as fuel poor in this context. So once we do know that policy design is somehow inaccurate, and it's not a criticism, this is matter entails that there is still large room for improving the design of these policies, we still have to focus and face on a big plethora of diverse actions. But also the need of the importance of trusted local help desks, providing a trustful environment, even for supporting those most in needs. Needs, in my opinion, and we noticed this in the municipality of Milan, so I'm referring to an activity that I carry out before joining RSA actually. It needs continuous training activity to specific operators that are grounded in the welfare system and not in the technical entities of the municipality. Welfare operators to be trained and being informed about how to dialogate, how to talk about energy vulnerabilities, and how to understand the energy practices and the energy behaviors itself. This is something new for the municipality, so it's a new completely challenge. Just to conclude, I'm going far from Europe actually, but it took my interest, it sparked my interest, the high priority score attributed to the category of energy barriers in daily life, which was quite high for the case of South Africa. This was quite insightful to me because it points to a particular acute priority in the case of South Africa. And while I admit that I do not have direct empirical evidence of this because I didn't carry out research in South Africa, I am inclined, I think that this result could be related to the infrastructural weaknesses of the South African energy system, including the technical and infrastructural dimension itself. That system has been long weakened over the years due to corruption, due to chronic underinvestment, due to lack of a proper agenda towards energy transition, lack of maintenance, and it's a system that remains heavily reliant on coal. And is kind of outdated, it's turning into obsolete, in a country that we do know is particularly shaped by ethnic segregation. In this context, the structural vulnerabilities have been further exacerbated by the major electricity supply that has occurred over the past 10 years in sub-Saharan Africa, which is that referred to load shedding, which is the intentional, no, I wouldn't say closure, but the intentional and temporary interruption of electricity supply during critical time, especially in informal settlements, due to technical and infrastructural impossibility of having decent and reliable pipelines for the transmission of electricity. Load shedding epitomizes the energy marginalization health nexus, not only for the consequences for those inhabitants, which are especially women at home in the domestic space, but also in relation to the impacts of blackouts and interruption of health infrastructures and on the delivery of other essential services as energy needs. So once a basic need as energy is not enough, is not well satisfied due to technical and infrastructural deficiencies, worsened consequence can be visible on other main key infrastructures for decent well-being, which is related to health. And it is also well documented by a paper which is published on The Lancet, which is noticed that in November 2022, therefore during the most severe phase of crisis and of load shedding, of 400 public hospitals, public healthcare facilities, don't know if it's all fully hospitals, serving 80% of the patients, only 77 hospitals were exempt from power cuts. Power cuts that lasted 7 hours and a total of 200 days in a single year. So of course this entails that the consequences in the everyday lives are highly harmful, and highly harmful also for the capabilities themselves, because once you perceive and you notice that there is a key deficiency, a key absence of electricity supply, of course even the capabilities for, and the capacity for the capability for voice, for denouncing these issues, for being supported, especially when you are in informal settlement, diminishes, and so is a voices that turns into a not listened voices that it's very difficult to be embedded within policy frameworks and within the energy transition themselves. I have 2 more comments, but I won't go beyond. I already exceeded my time. Thank you.
It's later. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both for very insightful and informative comments. Clemens, would you like to maybe refer it briefly? Or not now? Just
No, yeah, let me also take the opportunity to thank you. No, I think we're going to discuss maybe some questions with the audience and dig deeper.
Okay, so let's include all of us into discussion.
I have a very small question about your data collection. I was really interested to hear you say that you collected data on sexual orientation, and then I looked at the countries that you were working in and wondered whether that was problematic at all in any of them, and of course I'm thinking of Uganda.
Yeah. I can answer like this? Or?
I can hear you, but maybe you can use this mic, yes, okay? And then I will have one here.
So 2 parts of my answers. The first one is that we work together for data collection with an online panel provider who collected the data for us. And we had been reflecting with them which questions to ask in which context and where not. Second part of the answer, and I was surprised about the lack of knowledge on the side of the survey provider, what to ask where and where not. For example, in France, you're not allowed to ask about ethnicity and racial belonging. And as you mentioned, in the sub-Saharan African countries where we did the survey, there's in some countries death sentence on not having a heterosexual sexual orientation. So we did investigations on our own, and we did not mention these questions in sub-Saharan African, except South Africa.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Very insightful presentations. Just wanted to find out, and I see that in the map you have, you covered Western Africa, Eastern, and then Southern. Certainly, even within countries, you don't have homogeneous respondents, and so I wanted to find out what you find absolutely different amongst the 3 regions, sub-regions, or studied countries, as well as what's really strong similarities. Certainly there are a lot of similarities coming from there, having research on the continent. I know there are a lot of similarities, but what is there that surprises you in terms of similarity as well as the differences? Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm having a European perspective, so very, how you say, very much bird's eye. And for me, it was interesting to see with Nigeria, we have a kind of growing society. I mean, at the end of the day, our data collection was about the social psychology of those societies. So a growing society with good expectations towards their futures. Kenya, I'm not sure where to position them. Uganda as the poorest society we have in the data set. So this goes beyond my imagination of how to manage everyday life, to be honest. And South Africa as maybe as a kind of rich society or a transitional society with the highest maybe also perceived and conscious practices among the citizens. So this is how the kind of heuristic profile I have in mind for these countries. And similarities, well, what I did not expect in the beginning, also again from a very European perspective. In Europe, it is you decide for a solar PVC on your roof, and then you have a solar PVC. Then you take the energy from the solar PVC on your roof. And in Africa, it is in the African examples, it is more like I have national grid access, but it is not reliable. So I buy myself a generator, but it's expensive and maybe not healthy. So I buy myself a solar module with a battery, but I have not enough money for a very good battery. And so this complementary style is something I would capture better if we would do the research again, and which provides, describes a lot of the dynamics in the African countries compared to the European ones. I'm not sure if you want to... Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Other comments or question?
Thank you, Aleksandra. I think that one issue that has didn't really come so much within our project, but it is something that somehow deserves to be mentioned, is exactly what you just said, Clemens, the case of Kenya. Kenya was actually one of the first countries introducing questions about energy within their census. This has never happened before, and it was possible to work with some of the data, really like linking what they came out with the census also with the energy side. And this has not been done in any other part of Africa. This was done like in the previous census, so it is even less than 10 years, and they realized that it was absolutely necessary to have this exactly for policy reasons. And I think that this is something important to bring out, because a lot of what we do was exactly how do you use this data to inform policy. And in that sense, I would say that probably Kenya is one of the countries that is advancing the most in these areas compared to other ones. And also just one last point as a reflection, that most of the times we refer as Africa in general when it is a continent, and each country has not just the regions, but even each country has so many differences across them that I'm pretty sure that if we could have, of course it is impossible, applied in one single country the survey in the north, in the center, in the south, results would be also different. And this just shows the complexity when we talk about gathering data. It also reflects that here in Europe. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Maybe I can add to this. I think a strength of our data set is that we really have also regional level variables in it, so we can differentiate each country into, don't know, in Uganda it's about 6-7 different regions. In Europe it's even the how you say municipal level for differentiation. So this allows very strong analysis. Yeah, and for me, one of the largest insights of this whole data analysis issue was, and I think you pointed to this also, about the dynamics of the feeling of feeling deprived or not. So for example, who has a strong feeling of feeling deprived? It is the feeling of deprivation is positively correlated with education. So the higher you educated are, the higher your feeling of deprivation could be, because you have to be aware of the possibility of being deprived. France, also an interesting case, because in France we have legal entitlement of suffering under energy poverty and then getting subsidies from the government. And I think this did an important job in making the issue of energy poverty in France more prevalent, more conscious. And it's also interesting how the political right tries to use this narrative, the political left, but also the political right. In Germany, we have also this tries of the political right to instrumentalize energy poverty as one of the vehicles to get votes in elections. However, there's not a consciousness about it, so it didn't work. In France, this did work, and I think it was an important part of the political, how you say, political demands of the yellow vest movement to conduct measures against energy poverty. So yeah, it's very fuzzy and strange when we feel deprived, and those suffering under the most injustice are often not the ones who are really aware of it. And this is also shown in the data.
I just wanted to follow up on what you said and also the complexity of data. You mentioned awareness, and complexity of data is not only country specific, but it's also micro-specific, because we often focus on the household, but as also highlighted by Marielle and many others, household composition makes a difference. And if we want to take the intersectional perspective, it's even more crucial to look at the intra-household dynamics. And I'm saying this because when reading your deliverable, I really appreciated also the multi-method approach that you adopted, because if we only focus on the survey items, then for some items we don't see gender gaps. And if I recall correctly, there was one findings on men. I don't remember in which country in the sub-Saharan sample, but that were reporting more health energy-related risks. But then, this might sound kind of puzzling, but that is exactly the issues of awareness and the normalization of risk, the behavioral lens here is speaking. And if we only take the survey items, then we lose that perspective. Instead, the qualitative findings here unveil this perspective, because then you show that actually women were more exposed to health energy-related risk because they use energy practices in cooking that are often unsafe and very unhealthy. But given that these practices are normalized, they also normalize these perceptions, and so they don't perceive that risk. And so that's why it's even more crucial to have the multi-method approach, as highlighted also earlier by Marielle, and to look at the intra-household dynamics. But for that, we need interdisciplinary collaborations. And I close.
No, if I may, because yeah, that was very helpful, especially according to this last takeaway by Nives about what happened within the domestic space, about how it is created the knowledge about a specific energy deprivation and is then communicated to specific expert that will provide, in the best case, the support for alleviating this condition of energy deprivation. And this could be maybe ideal-typic of the Italian context, but what will happen is that most likely is the male breadwinner having the knowledge about the energy bill themselves, but the person that will ask for support going to the specific help desk will not most likely be the male breadwinner, but will be the women for one reason or another. Maybe more time because less time in the working phase, so there are still this reproduction of these aspects that hamper and influence the collection of the gathering of knowledge that should be then delivered to the informants or to those that will then provide a specific support. Otherwise, there will be, and is still now the case, this kind of reproduction where, for instance, when the women in the household part will ask for support, maybe when it's asked a kind of reply of a specific about a specific lack of knowledge of a specific service, the response could be, well, this is something that my husband knows better, I should ask to him. And the key challenge is overcoming this issue because it's getting much more complicated, the design of proper policies at the intersection of the behavioral, the environmental, the economic, and the social dimensions of energy vulnerability itself.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if there is no further question or comments, it's time for refreshment. So let me thank you so much for your contribution and for all comments in our discussion. And I think it's time for coffee break, which is over.
Thank you.